Hello and marhaba, you are watching Bruvvas TV.
Live from the Barra studio with your hosts Jad and Hussein.
Now today is a historic day because the format that you know of Bruvvas TV is changing.
So if you've watched Barra before, you know that we love telling stories, whether it's in our Two Truths One Lie game or just interesting facts. We love stories, whether they're crazy, wholesome or just absolutely insane.
So from today onwards, Bruvvas TV will be dedicated to storytelling. We'll be researching the craziest stories, the most unbelievable stories throughout football history, and we'll be telling them to you in our own way.
Now, as you know, everyone loves an underdog story, whether it's Leicester in 2016 or even Greece in 2004. Today we have an underdog story that is very, very close to our hearts, and it's one of the most underrated ones. I don't think it's spoken about enough.
It's amazing. And today's story has it all: death, hardship, struggles, but overall it focuses on how football can unite all.
And today we tell you the greatest underdog story, the Lions of Mesopotamia's 2007 Asian Cup campaign.
But just before we start, we're going to need you to leave a like, we're going to need you to leave a comment, and at the end of the episode, and at the end of every Bruvvas TV episode, we'll still be reading your comments. So make sure you're leaving your comments down below. Let us know if you like the new format, and for those of you that like the old Bruvvas TV format, don't worry, because a few of those segments will be making their way into the main podcast, so you won't be missing out.
And before we get into it, it's important that you guys know the situation in Iraq leading up to the tournament.
Now in March 2003, the US and UK came together to invade Iraq.
Boo!
The main reason they cited was terrorism and links to terrorism. This led to Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party collapsing in April, and later he was captured in December of the same year. Now because of that, Iraq had no government. So the US and UK stepped in and said, you know what? Temporarily, we're going to take government. We're going to take control.
Of course they did.
So naturally, what happened? The people amongst themselves wanted to gain control. They wanted to get power. And that caused a huge division never seen before in Iraq between three major groups. You had the Sunni population, the Sunni Muslim population, you had the Shia Muslim population, and you had the Kurds. And this led to a battle of power, and naturally it turned into a civil war.
And this situation led to multiple bombings across the country, which kind of led the surge of sectarianism within the region, therefore dividing the Iraqi population more than ever.
Millions of Iraqis were displaced, sports facilities were ruined, infrastructure, buildings, everything was in just shambles at this moment. And just to give you an idea, by 2007, over 100,000 civilian deaths had taken place.
And people also estimated that 100 people were dying a day.
That's mad.
Every day.
So as you can imagine, football was the last thing on the nation's mind, on the players' minds. No one really cared about football. Bigger things were happening. But amongst the chaos, in 2004, there was Olympic Games. Iraq competed in the men's football during the Olympic Games, and they topped their group, which included Costa Rica, Morocco, and Portugal.
Damn.
We beat Portugal 4-2, and can I just add, in 2004, in that team, a young Cristiano Ronaldo starred. But a bigger star rose to the occasion. Not Cristiano Ronaldo, Yunus Mahmoud, who would be Iraq's captain, scoring twice in a 4-2 victory. And Iraq actually ended up 4th in the competition, which is not bad at all.
Not bad at all. And in 2006, the Asian Cup qualifiers began, where Iraq were drawn into a group with China, Singapore, and Palestine.
Now Iraq's first game was against Singapore, away, and things didn't look good. From the very get-go, we lose 2-0 to Singapore.
And then it was time for the second game, which was Iraq against China at home. However, technically, it wasn't at home because the Asian Football Confederation wouldn't allow Iraq to play their home games in Baghdad. They had to play their home games in the UAE.
Basically meaning there was no home advantage for Iraq.
And the reasoning behind this is because there was a lot of bombs going off in Iraq. There were suicide bombs everywhere, shootings happening, people were dying, so the players didn't feel safe. But also, any visiting country that wanted to play in Iraq wouldn't feel safe either.
But despite that, Iraq still managed to beat China, and then Palestine and Singapore in the return fixture, meaning that Iraq secured first place and managed to qualify for the 2007 Asian Cup. This in itself was a huge victory. Despite everything going on back home, despite not being able to train or play at home, they still managed to top their group.
Now back in 2007, Iraq had every right to call off participating in that tournament, with another Middle Eastern country, Lebanon, doing the same in 2006 with their war against Israel.
So me in 2006, my mum's side is going through war, my dad's side is going through war. It wasn't a good year. Now we move on to the lead up before the Asian Cup. So the qualifiers took place in 2006. Now we're in 2007, months before the tournament begins.
And even just 2 months before the tournament started, Iraq were without a coach.
Damn.
And as if the absence of a manager wasn't bad enough, their players were getting threatened, and some of them had already lost family members and friends.
Now, Iraq had offered the job to 3 different coaches, all of whom declined, and I kind of understand why.
I don't blame them.
Yeah. Out of nowhere, a Brazilian Portuguese Muslim coach called Jovan Vieira just accepted the job. This is an Iraqi person's dream. A Brazilian Portuguese coach, but they're also Muslim. Unheard of.
And just to think about it, like imagine knowing the situation going on in Iraq. People are dying left, right and center. And you decide that this is the role for you to take. Like I just want to understand how brave someone can be.
Yeah.
To know that situation, that your life is basically on the line.
Yeah.
When you take that job.
Literally is. Unrest in the squad, unrest at home, no training place really. It's probably the most difficult job you could take. And just a little bit more about Jovan Vieira. He didn't have crazy experience. I mean, he had managed in the Middle East a little bit, managed in Brazil, I believe, but mainly his roles were assistants and under-20s coach. So if anything, this made Iraq probably even bigger underdogs.
So he took control of the team 2 months prior to the tournament. And in his first ever training session, only 6 players showed up.
What can you do with that?
6. Now, the Iraqi squad itself was made up of players who only played their club football in the Middle East, compared to the likes of Japan, Korea and Australia, who all had players featuring in Europe.
So let's just set the scene. You've got a war-torn country, a manager has just come in 2 months prior, and your squad isn't even the best in the tournament. Well, actually, it's nowhere near the best. But there are 5 players in particular that I want to highlight that give you an idea of the squad and the differences between the squad. Now, I'm going to start off with the main man, someone who's really, really close to my heart. Our captain, our striker, our goal scorer, Yunus Mahmoud. Now, Yunus Mahmoud was the leader on and off the pitch. And Yunus was a Sunni Arab from Iraq. But we also needed someone in the midfield, someone who could dictate the play, someone who was a maestro. And our answer to that was Neshat Ekram. Now, Neshat Ekram was one of the more technically gifted and creative players in the team. But till now, he's never disclosed whether he's Sunni or Shia. But we also needed a rock in the defense. And our answer to that was Ali Rahma. Ali was a Shia Arab from Iraq. So we've got a Sunni and we've got a Shia. And the third group that was divided in Iraq at this time was the Kurds. But we had a winger, Hawar Mullah Muhammad, who was a Kurdish Sunni Iraqi, who was versatile, somewhat bow-footed, and just quick. And his celebration was really good. It was a front flip.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen it.
Nani, eat your heart out. And lastly, the goalkeeper, my hero, someone who I modeled my game on, Noor Sabri. Now, Noor was actually part of the 2000 Asian Youth Cup winning team. So Iraq somewhat had a little bit of a golden generation going on. And Noor Sabri was a Shia from Baghdad, Iraq. Now, 3 of those players, Hawar, Noor and Nashat, all lost family members during the conflict leading up to the cup.
Hawar even brought a machine gun to every single training session they had. Imagine being security.
Yeah, you have to allow it.
No. Calm. Go.
So as you can see, the key players from our squad represented the biggest division back home in Iraq. So you had important Sunni players, you had important Shia players, and you had important Kurdish players.
And this led Jovan Vieira to focus less on tactics and more on unity.
So Jovan told the players to leave politics, leave religion, leave everything outside of the changing rooms. In the changing rooms, we're together. But no matter what they'd done on the football pitch and inside the changing rooms, unrest was still going on back home.
And unfortunately, no one was immune to the unrest back home in Iraq, as the team physio asked Jovan Vieira to be able to go back home for a couple days as his wife was giving birth. On his way to the travel agent in Baghdad to book his flights back to the Asian Cup, he fell victim to a suicide car bomb where he unfortunately lost his life.
Now, this was a few days before the tournament started, and Jovan Vieira actually says that he was very close friends to the physio, but he had to kind of keep it together for the sake of the players, obviously.
And on the 7th of July 2007, the Asian Cup kicked off with Iraq playing one of the hosts in the first match of the tournament, Thailand.
Now, the game took place in Bangkok, so the Thai crowd obviously had their home support, and things didn't start well for Iraq at all as Thailand took the lead early on. And understandably so, the team were not performing to their best, but the resilience prevailed, and the captain, Yunus Mahmoud, rose to the occasion and leveled the scores to make it 1-1, which is how the game would finish.
And a tough start was about to become even harder as Iraq had to face one of the favourites of the tournament, the Socceroos in Australia. And this was an Australia team that had the likes of Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell, and even a young Tim Cahill. And just to give you an idea of how good this Australia team was, they had played in the 2006 World Cup and only lost to a 95th minute penalty to the eventual winners, Italy.
But against the odds, Iraq took the lead through our midfield maestro, Neshat Ekram. But just after half-time, as expected, Mark Viduka strikes back with a great header and makes it 1-1. Now everything was pointing towards an Australian victory at this point, and things weren't looking great.
However, the Iraqi team pushed through and worked tirelessly, and to everyone's surprise, scored 2 more goals to end the game 3-1.
Come on! Now you'd think 3-1 against Australia, a lot of people would be happy. But a lot of people said that Iraq were quite fortunate to score those 2 goals. You know, a few deflections, a few questionable defending mistakes from Australia. So it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows at this point, you know?
And in their final game of the group stages, they came across another Middle Eastern country in Oman. Now in this game, Iraq just needed 1 more point to qualify for the knockout stages, and Oman didn't make it easy at all. However, through the heroics of the Iraqi goalkeeper, Noor Sabri, they made it happen.
Come on!
This led to a tight game which ended 0-0 between Iraq and Oman, which is all they needed.
Yes, we made it through. And in the next stage, the quarterfinals, Iraq were drawn against Vietnam, who are also one of the other hosts. Now, to add to the pressure of everything, Iraq had never reached an Asian Cup semi-final before. So this was a huge game, an opportunity to already make themselves heroes by just winning. So you can imagine the huge amount of pressure on the players. But we started the game incredibly. Who do you think scored within the first few minutes?
I think it has to be your hero, Noor Sabri. Yunus Mahmoud.
No other than Yunus Mahmoud headed goal to make it 1-0 early on against Vietnam. But we weren't done yet. In the second half, Iraq gets a free kick right outside the box. Now everyone is looking at Neshat Ekram. Everyone thinks our technically gifted midfield maestro Neshat Ekram is going to put this top bins. But our captain says, you know what?
No, don't tell me Yunus Mahmoud again.
Yunus Mahmoud, I didn't know you had it in your locker. A beautiful curling peacher of a ball into the top corner makes it 2-0 to Iraq, which is how the game would finish. And at this point, we've made history. It's enough. We can go home.
And as if it wasn't already hard enough to play in the quarterfinals against one of the hosts, they're now through to the semi-finals, where they came across, at the time, 2-time Asian Cup winners, South Korea.
Oh God. Now this was a tense game. Both teams created some chances, but both teams were quite reluctant to push forward, understandably so. And after 90 minutes, neither team scored, pushing us to extra time. But again, it was a similar story in extra time. No team were able to find the back of the net, which led us, I'm nervous even talking about it now, penalties. South Korea, you'd say, are more technical than Iraq. They're more technically gifted out of the 2 teams. So penalties would probably favor them. And not to mention that their confidence was sky high, because a few days prior, in the quarterfinals, they had beaten Iran on penalties to advance to the semis. So South Korea have been here and done it. Now both teams scored their first 3 penalties. For Iraq, it was Hawar Mullah Muhammad, Qusay Munir, and defender Haydar Abdul Amir.
Now, as Korea took their penalty first, their 4th penalty taker stepped up, Yim Ki-hun. But Noor Sabri cemented his name in the Iraqi history books and in the football history books as the penalty was saved. Better than Buffon?
Don't even compare the 2. But it wasn't over yet. Iraq had to score. And then we had the 5th penalty to be taken as well. So victory still hasn't been achieved. Let's relax, boys. Ahmad Mnajid took Iraq's 4th penalty, and thankfully, alhamdulillah, he scored. But Korea still had to take their 5th. It's still in the balance.
Now it's time for Korea's 5th penalty, and Kim Jong-woo steps up to take it.
They have to score.
They have to score this penalty. If they miss, Iraq win.
Don't do this to me.
Does it happen? I'm about to tell you.
No, I'm about to tell them, because this is my moment.
Sorry.
Kim Jong-woo steps up. Noor Sabri guesses the right way, but it doesn't matter. He hits the post, and Iraq make history, defying all odds, and make it to the final of the Asian Cup 2007. Now you see the excitement I'm feeling now? Times that by 100, times that by 1,000,000. That's how the Iraqi players were feeling, and that's how the fans back home and all around Iraq were feeling. But it couldn't last too long, because what was happening back home just didn't escape them.
As the players headed into the changing rooms, they were met with devastating news from back home. They switched on the TV to find out that there were multiple bombings across the country, which led to the death of 50 people.
And these attacks and bombings were purposely targeted at the Iraqi fans celebrating the win against South Korea.
One of those unfortunate events took place in an ice cream parlor as 30 Iraqis were celebrating the victory, and one man decided to blow everyone up.
Now, understandably so, the players were absolutely distraught and devastated. They weren't even able to celebrate the enormous victory that has just taken place. And about a day or so after, the players called a meeting where they discussed whether they should play in the final or not.
Now you're probably asking why the Iraqi team would be hesitant to play in the final after doing so well in the tournament so far. But you have to understand, if these difficult situations were happening throughout the tournament, and even in the semi-final after such a big victory against Korea, just imagine the events that could take place if they were to win it.
Now, as the players came together and spoke and discussed and pondered whether they should play in the final or not, something came up on TV. A lady by the name of Haidar. Now, for those of you who don't speak Arabic, Haidar means the mother of Haidar. It's basically what you call elders, or the respectful way of addressing people by the name of their eldest son. Now, Haidar unfortunately lost her son Haidar in the attacks that took place after the victory against South Korea. But she had a message to the players. While she was mourning, while she was sad, understandably so, the Iraqi population caught wind that potentially the players wanted to not play in the final. And she told them there's no way that's happening. You're going to play in that final, you're going to win. And until you come back home with the trophy, she promised not to bury her son Haidar.
This led to the players rallying together more than ever and now vowing to play those final 90 minutes, not just for the country, not just for their people, but for Haidar as well.
90 more minutes that could potentially bring a smile, just a simple smile, to the faces of the Iraqi people. Now, I actually watched an interview of Nashat Akram where he was speaking in Arabic, and he said that watching Haidar's interview, and the team had received 2 letters before the match. These 2 letters were from an anonymous source. Till now, none of the players know who sent these letters. They got one day before the final and one on the day of the final. And this letter was full of poetic, deep, meaningful conversation and a letter to the team, just pouring out their heart. And Nashat Akram said those 2 combined gave the players an extra 40 or 50% that they felt they were lacking.
However, to give 90 more minutes wasn't going to be an easy task because their opponents in the final was Saudi Arabia, who were already 3-time Asian Cup winners and had beaten Japan on their way to the final 3-2.
Iraq had Yunus Mahmoud, Saudi Arabia had Al-Qahtani, who was at this moment the top goal scorer of the Asian Cup with 4 goals, 1 more than Yunus Mahmoud.
Now, it's the day of the final and the game begins. It's a cagey affair and both teams had chances. But one thing was clear: Iraq's determination and hunger to win this game was evident. Every 50-50 battle, every loose ball, the Iraqi players poured their hearts out to make sure they came out on top.
Now, everyone loves a great story in football, but football doesn't care about that. So, victory was not promised for Iraq. However, around the 70th minute, that fearlessness and that aggressiveness and the passion that you speak about was clear and demonstrated by Yunus Mahmoud as he was in the corner holding onto the ball. The Saudi player was determined to try and take the ball off him. Yunus Mahmoud wasn't having it and forced a corner out of the Saudi Arabian player. So in the 72nd minute, Hawar Mullah Muhammad signals to take the corner. Left foot, he whips the ball in. And I ask you, Chad, who other than Yunus Mahmoud to rise above everyone and head the ball into the Saudi goal? Iraq take the lead 1-0.
But it wasn't over. Up until the final whistle, Saudi Arabia pushed and pushed to get that equalizer. Did they?
They came close, but not close enough. Iraq had made history and are now the 2007 Asian Cup winners. Iraq had done it. They've done it for their people. Against all odds, I don't think you're understanding all the trouble that happened before the qualifiers, during the qualifiers, before the tournament, during the tournament. It all came together. It didn't matter. The players pushed through. The players united, put all their differences aside, religious, ethnic, and they put a smile on the Iraqi people's faces. For the first time in years, they gave them a reason to celebrate.
And one of the most famous lines from that tournament, and to be honest, football history,
Yes.
came from English commentator Simon Hill, who said, and I quote, "Football succeeds where politics failed."
Getting that tattooed right here. And in the post-match interview, you can just tell, as excited as the players were, they kept sending the message, unity, we need to come together, we need to unite, and let this victory be the reason we do so. And I've got a story myself about this, actually. In 2007, I was the young age of 10, and we had friends that were really close to us, Iraqi friends, and I watched the final at their house. Now, we were on completely different sides of the political spectrum in Iraq. They were Group A, we were Group B. We disagreed on every aspect that had to do with politics that were possible in Iraq right now. But as soon as we scored that goal and as soon as the final whistle went, I picked them up. They picked me up. I was screaming with their dad. Their dad was hitting me. It was crazy.
And Hussein, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard that in 2007 in the Ballon d'Or rankings, Yunus Mahmoud was placed quite high.
Well, Jad, you're not mistaken. Yunus Mahmoud in the Ballon d'Or rankings 2007 finished 29th. So when I pick him in my drafts, when I say he's one of the best strikers of all time, don't you dare laugh. My captain. Now obviously the team came back home and was celebrated, trophy in the air. They brought it back. Songs were even written about the team and bringing the trophy back home and how excited and how happy they made the nation. Until now, those songs are still played. It's one of the best moments in Iraqi history. They interviewed a guy a few days ago in Iraq and they said to him, this is how you know how much of a deep impact it's had. They said, oh, like, what do you think of the Iraqi national team right now? Because Iraqi, you know, they're doing quite well. And he goes, yeah, really good, blah, blah. They go, who do you think like should start up front? He said, Yunus Mahmoud. The interviewer goes, he's retired. He goes, no.
He can't comprehend the fact that he's not part of the team. Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah. That's like someone said England World Cup qualifying team. Where's Bobby Moore? Where's Bobby Moore?
Bobby Charlton, where no Bobby Charlton. And obviously 2 of the 5 players that I highlighted, Nashat Akram and Yunus Mahmoud, were about to make big moves to Europe. But because of what was happening back home, because of the politics, because of the war, unfortunately, they weren't granted work permits for either them or their families to come to the UK. Nashat Akram actually agreed to sign for Manchester City, and Yunus Mahmoud agreed to sign for an English club, not sure which one, but he said that they didn't allow his family to come with him, and therefore he went to Qatar instead.
And the reason I love this story so much is not just the unity of the Iraqi people, but you could say the people around the world, but it was more focused on the Middle Eastern people. Because I remember reading articles about this and seeing people comment about it. And a lot of people were from different countries in the Arab region and they were happy for Iraq. And that's the most important thing. I saw people from Saudi Arabia saying they went into that final with kind of a 50-50 heart in the fact that they want their country to win, but they wouldn't mind losing if it meant the Iraqis got to celebrate.
I just can't see an underdog story better than that. When you put everything together, not the best players maybe in the tournament, the situations around, a coach who doesn't really know the players, family members passing away, no home stadium, it's everything combined. It's literally the worst nightmare that turned into the best dream. Quote that.
That was a good one.
That was, innit?
The reason this story was so like special and close to my heart is because I did a DNA test recently.
Oh,
yeah, found out I'm 0.5% Iraqi. So
my broski, man, welcome to the team. I'm saying you've been a bit more manly recently. Yeah,
it's different, isn't it? It's different. So
by the way, can I just say Iraq have the best national anthem ever?
What's the national anthem?
Mawtani, Mawtani. Bro, put your hand on your chest. You're for 0.5. I think that win sparked a change for the better. Because since then, year on year, we've progressively developed as a nation. The war has stopped, thankfully. UK and US obviously left the country, left it to the Iraqi people. Unity is coming back between the Kurds, the Sunnis, the Shias, who actually rallied together to defeat a terrorist organization like ISIS in 2012, 2013, just a few years later. And now, more than ever, Iraq is in a good, stable position. And I hope for the people of Iraq, the beautiful people of Iraq, and the beautiful country that is Iraq, that we just keep pushing and growing for the better. And inshallah, the new generation, the new lions of Mesopotamia can make us proud and make it to the World Cup 2026.
Inshallah. We hope you enjoyed our first ever
Bruvvas
TV story. And please let us know if there's any other football stories you would like us to cover. And before we go, let us get into some of your comments that you left for us to read out.
So we've got a few comments left on the last Bruvvas TV episode, and we urge you to do the same on this episode. Leave your comments, let us know what stories to talk about. Just comment anything nice about us and we'll read it on the next Bruvvas TV. The first comment, El Culero 3381 says, can't wait till Barra Brothers reach 10k, need that weekly content, best pod on YouTube.
Ooh,
Thank you.
He wasn't lying about the last part. He wasn't.
And obviously you can see that we're trying to give you more content. We've got the podcast, we've got these stories, and we also just want to, we've got a few more ideas that we'd like to just put in. Speaking of Saudi Arabia and Iraq's victory against them in 2007, we've got a comment from Naif Ahmad who says, big fan from Saudi. Thank you, Habibi. You guys, goats of football YouTube. Perfect mix of football knowledge, banter, and vibes. Wish you guys the best. Hassan, post more TikToks too, G. I will try for you. Naif, thank you, bro. And big up all our Middle Eastern followers as well. We hope to keep growing it because obviously as Arabs, we want to make you proud.
And the last comment is from DV_04 2-3. And he says, or she says, another 2 years and hopefully you guys will be at 100k subscribers. Had stocks since you guys were filming on iPhones. That's how we know you're from the very beginning.
Look at us now, telling documentary stories.
And filming them ourselves.
Leave us some comments to read out next week, and maybe we will tell your story. And if we tell your story that you left, we will give you a shout out in the beginning of the episode. How about that?
Love you so much.
Like, comment, subscribe, and yalla ya Iraq.